Listen Lanarkshire is a community radio station governed by the registered charity Getting Better Together Limited. Therefore, the radio station itself retains political neutrality, and any political views or comments aired as part of political discussion programming or otherwise are not the views of Listen Lanarkshire, nor of Getting Better Together Limited. The station has a set of key commitments found on the Ofcom website, and we adhere to all necessary Ofcom rules. For more information or inquiries, please contact us at radio@shotshealthyliving.com.
Hello and welcome back to What's the Point? The only political show where the only thing more muted than our microphones is a North Lanarkshire Council meeting. I'm your host Greg Lennon, broadcasting live in North Lanarkshire, where amendments go to die and scrutiny gets straight to voicemail. Tonight we're taking a guided tour of the council's greatest hits of nonsense under the council leader, the modern day El Presidente of Airdrie. First up, Councillor Jim Logue, North Lanarkshire's unelected Emperor of Silence, refused, muted and stitched up an amendment on the governance review. And where was the SNP leader in all of this, the so-called main opposition? Apparently happy not to read, not debate or even hear the amendment. No fight, no fuss, just nodding along like it's a karaoke night at Merlin's Bar with our former boss. And the Tory Chair of Audit and Scrutiny, well, you'd think someone with scrutiny in their title might want more of it, but apparently not. Big Sandy's quite happy to make sure that nothing more comes his way. We've also got confirmation for the council's monitoring officer this week that the Provost, yes, Mr Kenneth Duffy, solely decides motion competency. That power, all in the hands of an officer, the Provost, Civic leader, it all sits with him, and Kenneth can decide whatever way he decides in relation to a motion, Jerry. But as I said, not the officer, the leader, the monarch, the Lord Provost.
The Lord
Just
Provost.
So we're completely clear.
Yes.
Lovely stuff. And remember Councillor Barry McCluskey, who was on a few shows ago, where we submitted a motion to recognise him at the council as a recent European blind golf champion. How did that fare, Jerry?
Former world number one, Canadian Open champion, British Open champion. Didn't matter. The motion to recognise Barry and to feed on his legacy was deemed not competent.
So, a no-go. No competency, no room at the inn.
Nope.
So, but the same guy who's up for a Sports Personality of the Year award,
Barry is.
Apparently he can get recognised as a champion as long as it's out with North Lanarkshire Council. Or if he decides he joins the Labour Party administration, he might get a wee word in the Wishaw press.
You never know.
And we'll be diving into this week's full council meeting. Only one motion, no amendment,
Ridiculous.
no dissent, just tumbleweeds in the Labour Party payroll in full effect. This is democracy, folks, but only if the leader approves it. So tonight we ask, is this still a council or just a very controlling administration? He's not the Messiah, he's just a naughty boy, Jerry.
I know.
And the death of debate is very real, and we're not buying it quietly, that's for sure. And to help me make sense of all the madness, well, I'm joined by usual by my old pal, the Belzell Buller himself, Jerry Brennan, known for his fierce politics, fiercer aftershave, and a fashion sense that screams Tour de France meets Town Hall. Hello there, Jerry.
Good evening, Greg, and as always, it's an extraordinary pleasure to be here in the salubrious surroundings of Shotts,
Well,
North
we've been
Lanarkshire.
used to the sun shining here all the time, Jerry, but now the dark nights are fair kicking in. It's very strange to look outside and it's cloudy and windy.
Indeed.
But tonight, Jerry, we're joined by a special guest, Cllr Cameron McManus.
The room has lit up.
The truth bombs and the trees, depending on which green policy he gets in first. But anyway, this is What's the Point, a political education show that our El Presidente wished to be ruled out as incompetent. Nay joy, Jim. But let's get started. Cameron, hello.
How you doing? It's good to eventually be here.
Is that right, Cameron? Is that a dig there? Is that a dig, Cameron?
It's great to have you here, Cammy.
Yes. Very, very warm welcome to you, Cameron.
Absolutely.
So, Cameron, for the good folks at home, you represent which ward area?
It is Murdiston, which is Cleland, Nemains, Cambersneffin and Coltness, Dale Park, and that's about it. The 5 wee areas squished into Murdiston, which does not sit within my ward.
There you go. So, how's it been being a councillor, Cammy? What would you say has been your main achievement since being elected? And what would you say is the biggest challenge?
Where to start? I think one of the biggest achievements is probably, some of the listeners will probably know very well about the rat issues across North Lanarkshire in recent years.
Just a disclaimer, that's not the SNP group we're talking about here, Cameron.
It's another type of vermin this time. It was one of the issues that kept up during lockdown. Was one of the main issues. It came to a point where people were getting made homeless due to the rat population getting between their walls, living in their attics, and it was hell. Most of these people working living through during a rough time as it was. It's quite weird that there's individuals within the council that try to steal credit from us. That was all their hard work, despite apparently never reporting an actual rat issue to officers.
Oh.
That was an awful conversation with one of the officers who's no longer with the council now. So, it was between getting in the pest control workers, it was in some of the big giant skips into some of the worst areas and busy in the most affected areas.
So this was due to what, the sort of changes to the bin cycles, Cameron? Or?
I know, it's always something that always gets pedalled back on, that changing the free weekly bin service, so it will have no effect on any of these issues, and lo and behold, here we are, and the rats are getting bigger. And
many of our good listeners will remember when Jim Logue came out in the press in the election year of 2017 to say this is all nonsense, there will be no changes to the bin uplifts. And then 3 weeks later, once he got in and was leader of the council, he changed the bin cycles. As I said again, for anybody that remembers, will remember well.
So, Cammy, you are now in your second term as a councillor. So by the time you're done here, it'll be, 10 years?
10 years service, that's a long time.
For a relatively young guy, I mean, you're only 27, 28?
28, I was 19 when I first got elected. At one point I was the youngest in Scotland. Not sure about Britain, but I was definitely youngest in Scotland for some time.
So tell us then a wee bit about your political journey, because I'm sure it goes way back to
well, I first got on
early teenage years.
The gravy train, Cameron.
The gravy train. I didn't want to say that out loud, but
it was actually 2013, the year before the referendum. I think it just came at the right time. I was just finishing high school at the time, got involved in a few of the campaigns. I was just eligible enough to vote in the referendum, which was the day after my birthday, so I just scooted across the line. I wasn't really politically involved or that through school. Everybody loves an argument. I've always loved an argument, believe it or not. Would you believe that?
Having known you for a wee while, I'd probably say yes. I'm assuming that your early political leanings were Scottish nationalists, or certainly for independence, but a left-leaning kind of.
I've always been left-leaning. I've always, even during my time within the SNP, I was always more left, and the party would allow you to be at times, especially once you reach the political positions. During that time I got involved within the youth wing of the politics. I think that's where majority of people board the gravy train for last week. To be fair, you see anything out of turn and, oh no, you can't say that, this is a party line, you're not allowed your own views, this is the
Glasgow Uni Debating Society.
So were you involved in the youth parliament as well? Just Scottish, was it SYI, the
Scotland Independence,
and YSI?
It was all through that. It wasn't through the youth parliament. I was up to other things during my youthful years, then getting involved with the youth parliament.
What did it do in the YSI, Cammy? What is it?
Realistically, it was just free jollies every 6 months.
Free jollies?
Aye. I think I went a few of them. The only thing you paid for was your flight. The accommodation was usually paid for by the party, and
So you would
That's all right.
travel extensively then, or I just assumed it would be.
There was quite a lot through Europe. There was a few times, I think there was a trip to Barcelona, so there was a trip to Germany. There's been quite a lot through Europe, to be
Quite
fair.
a lot through Europe. Is it backpacking or was it decent accommodation?
No, it was hostels. It was always hostels. They were
Right.
they were cheap out, but once you've had a few beers in you.
Who was the
a bed's a
designated
bed.
adults at that? These are all kids.
There was then, I think, one of the trips we went to, the oldest person there was about 21, 22. The youngest person was about 16,
Wow.
17.
So
they
you
were
just all
very-
left to your own devices then?
Aye, pretty much. Make your own way there, make your own way home.
My goodness, bit of party pace for it.
Aye.
That's very, very bizarre. In that, Cammy, is there any prominent names that you met within the YSI?
There was many. I've not written any of them down, but I don't think there's any that's actually came to much. There's a few councillors within the mix, to be fair.
Who's the councillors?
Mostly Glasgow. To be fair, outside a couple of Edinburgh. There was
Alan Casey, Christina Cannon, Rory Kelly in there.
I don't think I actually met Rory Kelly, but that was about the same time.
Right.
But it was a similar sort of rushy folk. It was all during the referendum, and even now it's still sort of the same areas. It's always very well represented within Glasgow, Edinburgh, and anywhere outside that. It's sort of if your face fits.
So just for the good folk at home, just before I let you in, Jerry, just to give them a wee bit of background, it's usually the ones in the shiny suits that are the ones who are within the YSI.
It happens a lot, especially when it comes to party conferences. There's individuals,
Aye.
17-year-olds, just rolled out of bed and
Pointy shoes and shiny suits.
Aye. You
Got
think
to
I've
change
gone to
the
a
world
wedding?
as long as they're promoting the party line. But the critical point is this doesn't just happen within the SNP, it happens in all parties.
Happens in them all.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
So I think that's important to raise that point.
But Cameron's journey on the train, if you like, began in 2013, right? So you've been well travelled. You've travelled through Europe with the YSI. You've been involved, I would imagine, in SNP annual conferences and things like that. But then in 2017 you get elected. Tell us a wee bit about your journey into that, because you don't simply go from being a young guy just eligible to vote a few years before that, and then you're thrust into local government. How does that happen?
Believe it or not, it's not something that I was pushing towards. I was approached at least 2 or 3 different times by individuals within the SNP to try and stand. First time, no, I'm not interested. Second time, I'm not sure. The third time I was asked, I was like, look, we desperately need a candidate in your area. You're the only person that meets criteria and there's a known face in the community, and it's just sort of, alright, okay. Sounds like a good shout.
Were you vetted?
I was vetted. I was after one of the annual conferences. It was in one of the back rooms while the last Sunday main event was going on by 2. I think one of them still in it. No, 2 of them are still MSPs. To be fair, done in the back room. Got told I'd find out the next day, and then about 10 minutes later, one of the MSPs chased me down. He was like, you've passed.
Well, it was an interesting point. So obviously the people that voted for the SNP come this council election, which would have been in 2022, the vetting process was far different from what it was back in 2017. Cameron and I got elected in 2017, Jerry, and Cameron's process of vetting, I was vetted also. I think I had the record for the most amount of vettings into our party, considering the amount of complaints that would come in for Coatbridge councillors about me. But basically it's not like them to make false allegations, as I keep saying.
No. Perish the thought.
Basically, with the vetting process for 2022, there was only 3-4 people vetted for that full council, which might actually explain why the SNP lost the administration.
Well, I had to go through a very rigorous process of vetting. So it started off with the paperwork. So it's they look to cover 6 areas, and you've got to put in a testimony of your experience in each of these areas. You submit that. It's got to be signed by branch members to support your candidacy, and that goes through, and then you're notified whether or not you've been accepted onto the big platform sort of thing. And I was, and never heard anything for a long time after. I probably submitted mine maybe 12 months before the election took place, and Labour candidates were all in place, Tory candidates were all in place, but the SNP were, we were, slow out of the blocks, and then all of a sudden you get notification to say there's going to be this massive vetting event online, and there's probably going to be maybe 60 individuals there from all over the country. So I had to go to that twice, and then having got through those two online processes where you're assessed on how you respond to planning applications and other constituency issues, but then you have to go through a kind of an interview, and one of the interviews is pretty tough. So it's like a press interview before you go through. So mine was really rigorous. Yours doesn't seem to have been that rigorous.
I remember doing the STAR approach, the 6 questions, and to be perfectly honest with you, I done it in 2017 and never updated it. I stood for the party and
It's the same
for the
questions
Holyrood
they've been
list.
asking. They've been asking the same questions for 2014.
No.
So again, I've had the opportunity to sit for vetting or stand for or whatever, go through the vetting process on a number of occasions. And as I said, the reason why it shocked me in 2022 is that the incumbents, none of the incumbents were asked to go to vetting, were they? I think there was only 3 or 4 years. It was the previous leader, Tom Johnston, who...
So all the councillors who'd previously been elected
were not asked to go for vetting. There was only 4 years that were asked to go.
Wow.
Tom Johnston, the previous leader of the SNP group,
elected since 97.
yeah,
Is that right?
stood as an MP candidate in Cumbernauld. Honestly, a stalwart of the party, an absolute stalwart of the party.
So why would he be
Significant
vetted,
history
Greg?
and heritage. I'm coming on to it. The next person to be vetted in that list was his wife, Catherine Johnston, who was a councillor as well. Catherine had a tremendous service as an elected member within
from
North
Islay,
Lanarkshire.
I understand.
From Islay. And again, an absolute advocate and staunch nationalist, former head teacher in Glenboig. A real credible individual.
Oh yeah, I've met her many times.
Their good pal, Paul Damasio, was vetted, who was the former business manager. And Paulie ended up getting vetted because, again, disagreements between that Coat Bridge cabal and the relation to the leadership, because what you were having as the SNP group actually challenging Labour at that point, and Labour didn't like it. And really the saving grace for Labour during that period was the pandemic, and last but not least was me. I was vetted in that process as the secretary of the SNP group. So really, in effect, what we had was the administration or the management executive committee for the previous incumbency to the new one, where they put forward an individual who has got a checkered past, to say the least, and they promoted that, and that person was not vetted in that process.
And is that person no longer leader?
It was very publicly resigned in 2022,
2023, I think. 23, yeah,
right.
absolutely.
It took a number of months
So
before any action was taken.
here's the issue that I have with vetting,
Yeah.
particularly the SNP, and I can only speak about the SNP because that's where I came from, right? You've got the process where I go through a full vetting exercise. Cammy and you go through a lesser exercise than the one I went through, or did you go through everything that I went through?
I had to go through full vetting again.
You did?
Yeah, two interviews I think it was for that, because what happened was, I think it was at a time, because obviously my colleagues in the SNP group in North Lanarkshire, especially those for Coat Bridge, which branch I shared at that point,
right,
that we are not happy that I was reselected.
So
I think maybe from my point of view, obviously I spent a number of time within the NEC with the SNPs as well. The year before, when I stood for the list in Holyrood, there was a very brief Zoom call with myself and about 2 other individuals. I literally just came off the flight from holiday at one point to do a short Zoom call, got told, yeah, okay, that's your voting over and done with, and then a couple of days later, oh, you passed voting.
There you go.
So
I think serious questions are going to be need to be asked.
There's one worse than that. There's one worse than that, right? So
there's no brown envelopes involved. By the
no,
way.
I don't mean brown envelopes at all. So, right. So, as a new person, a new candidate, I go through the full gamut.
Right.
You go through the full gamut,
Always.
but your colleagues don't.
No.
You get kid gloves, and Barry McCluskey, Councillor Barry McCluskey, had no vetting.
Yeah.
No vetting whatsoever.
Just ushered in.
Wasn't even a member. And then lo and behold, he is put forward as candidate for Thornywood. So what that tells me immediately is that vetting, candidate selection, etc. within the SNP is pretty shambolic.
Again, the bit about this is hearsay and gossip. That's the bit, and that seems to be what prevails. And again, if you think about it, we did a show last week highlighting how much wages these individuals are on. Staggering amounts of money for what's actually taking place.
Indeed.
And if it's
eye-watering sums, Greg, in some instances.
And if you look at the level of competency that's behind that eye-watering sum, I wouldn't say there's much there behind the curtains, but what I would say is you are going to vehemently protect that. If you've never had a job before, you have no formal qualification. And funnily enough, after that thing last week, I got sent a message on Facebook, and the question was, what formal qualifications do you need to have to be in that position? Because ultimately, this person highlighted to me, I've got a postgrad in community development, I've got this, I've got that, and basically I've spent a master's, I've got a master's in community development, spent all my days studying to then get into my career field, and then now choosing my career field and everything else, but yet these individuals can just come in off the street, get about 60 to 70,000 pounds per year, whilst they are busting their chops on 29. And you're looking and you're going, do you know what, it's a fair point. Yeah, well, to confirm, you do not need any formal qualification, none at all. Never. You just need to know your MSP or MP and get a wee tap in the shoulder. Especially if you're a Labour Party member, you're laughing because they really struggle for the numbers. And again, it seems to be a cold winter can take out half their so-called selection candidate.
Dave isn't here this week, Councillor. David Crichton, our good pal David Crichton, isn't here this week. Hopefully he'll be back in next week, and he might be able to put some meat on the bones in terms of that, because what people won't really take into account about the council and your councillor is that the committee and the conveners of those committees make big decisions on big budgets.
There's a couple of £1 billion.
You're talking about billions of pounds.
Yeah.
And if you're coming in and you're not qualified,
Steve,
and I don't want to say you're not suitably qualified in terms of financial management, you could be signing off on contracts or signing off on liabilities or signing off on regulatory returns to the Scottish Government when you actually don't have that much of an idea about what you're actually signing off.
I've made this point before in relation to conveners of that council. You look at the standard and the calibre of them. Councils used to be full of retired professionals, whether it be teachers, whether it be lawyers, doctors, GPs, whatever it may be, and they were there in relation to the local area. What you've got now is just this mass jump on that gravy train, because that additional income is going to sort you out. So really, in effect, what you've now got is, and this hasn't been disrespectful, but if you look at the career paths of half of the conveners within that Labour group and that administration, even the SNP group, we could talk about that as well, when they had a short-lived administration.
Well, I remember it, Greg. I remember it.
You boys had a position.
6 weeks. 6 weeks,
But again, if you look at the calibre of the individuals that's taken up these positions, they wonder we're in chaos. They wonder it suits the leader. They wonder it suits.
How many times have you went to a committee and you've noticed, and I should, Jerry, obviously, most us three at least, are a bit more well educated on housing, and you've asked a question at the housing committee, and as soon as it comes, you ask a question, the convener goes, Alright, okay, which council officer's taking this question?
Well, Cammy,
accountability.
you have just took us into a lovely segue. You have jumped ahead.
One might almost say that was planned.
Well, you would think that might be. So, Cammy, what we're going to discuss is that policy and strategy committee last week. To lay the sort of backdrop to this for the good folk at home, there was a proposal under item 9 of that agenda for a governance review, and within that governance review it was officer written, and what they wanted to do was look at all the stuff that councillors have to abide by, how they're making their decisions, what standing orders, etc. But these were recommendations coming from officers, it wasn't coming from elected members. Now, the issue in that is, if there is a proposal to be made about how that council's governance structure is to be ran and conducted, surely that should be coming for councillors.
Greg, I'm going to be honest. Item 9 of the Policy and Strategy Committee from last Thursday, it might seem bland, but it was one of the most important items of business that we will discuss in this entire council, and that's the council from 2022 to 2027, because it's a check and balance on all the powers that exist. It's about how the powers are separated between elected members and officers. It's about a check and a balance on whether or not you've got the right balance between delegated authority to officers to make decisions, operational decisions that need to be made on a day-to-day basis, and those decisions which need signing off, agreement from elected members. And it takes into account the period where COVID had hit, Gold Command was in place, when a number of powers that would have been reserved to elected members transferred over to officers. Some of those powers never came back. So it was an opportunity for us to reset North Lanarkshire Council for probably for the next term and beyond, to make sure that relationship between members and officers was clearly understood and was, what's the word that I need? It's got to be, it gave the council the ability to say to itself, we've had a health check, and we are now in a position where all the governance structures are transparent. There's accountability on both sides, and members of the public will be really clear on that. And we never even had a debate on it. It was quite disgraceful. It was disgraceful.
Item 9, the review of the Council's Democratic Committee and decision-making governance procedures. I've been advised that Councillor Lennon, in accordance with Standing Order 25, has submitted an amendment. Can I ask committee services to hand out the amendment, please? And Mark, could you ensure that all members who are joined online have access to the amendment as well? Members 5 minutes to read over this, and then I'll ask the monitoring officer to advise me in terms of Standing Order 31 if the amendment meets the criteria of competency, relevancy and affordability. So I'll give you 5 minutes reading time.
Chair, could I ask that the amendment is actually emailed out for the benefit of the members that are online, because it's a bit difficult reading it from the screen here.
Sorry, can you...
Yeah, would it be possible for the amendment to be emailed to the members that are attending online, just so that we could read it properly, please?
Mark.
Thank you, Councillor Carricker. It's in the process of being emailed just now.
Thank you.
A few moments later.
Can I just check if all members have had the opportunity to read it? Does anyone want an extension to the reading time? Okay. Can I say, I will now ask the monitoring officer to advise me in terms of, as I said, Standing Order 31. Does this meet the criteria of competency, relevancy and affordability? Rachel, please. Sorry, I'm told that something's come up in line.
Councillor Logue, I'm happy to hear what Rachel has to say while we wait on that. Very happy to hear that in the first instance.
One eternity later.
If a member has not had sight of it, are you happy to hear the monitoring officer, or do we wait until every member has had sight of the amendment? Can I have some feedback, please? Okay, in the absence of feedback, I take it that people are agreeable to moving on. And the next step is to hear from the monitoring officer in terms of the standing order that I previously referenced. Rachel, please.
Thank you, Convener. You'll note the amendment refers to matters that are within the proposed scope of the review, including the scheme of delegation, petitions, decision-making principles and fundamentally elected member engagement. In terms of competency, I would say that the amendment directs and preempts the outcome of that review, including the assumption of a previous practice in relation to amendments and motions and the remit of the Audit and Scrutiny Panel. Any decisions would be a matter for full council and cannot be predetermined or directed by Policy and Strategy Committee. And on that basis, I do have concerns in relation to the competency of the motion.
Okay. Having heard Rachel, the monitoring officer, and now I'm going to Standing Order 14. And my decision is that the amendment is not competent for the reasons outlined by the monitoring officer. Councillor Lane, you wish to bring in a point of order. Can you tell us in terms of which order has been negated that you feel needs to be clarified?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Happy to read out the standing orders which would apply here. So in relation to Standing Order 31, Chair, I think that the submission is an amendment, Chair. It does not preempt any outcomes. It adds additionality to ensure that this proposal is civic-led or citizen-led, as the proposal stipulates. Chair, I think that taking the position to not allow for full democratic transparency to take place in relation to this does not shine a good light in this council, and I would ask for a reconsideration, although I do note that you've made a ruling there, Chair. So it's to confirm, is your ruling still standing, or are you prepared to allow the amendment to pass?
On the basis of the advice which has been given by the monitoring officer that any decision today could usurp the authority of a council, and in terms of standing orders, no committee can usurp the authority of the council meeting. Therefore, in terms of Standing Order 14, I'm now moving that the amendment, the proposed amendment, is incompetent, and I'm now intending to move on. Any further comments, questions?
Chair, the point of order.
Now, go and with the standing orders in front of you.
Yeah, I have them as well.
Allow the chair to comment. The decision of the chair in all matters within their responsibilities shall be final and shall not be open to question or discussion. So it's not open to question or discussion. We're moving
Chair,
on.
I would refer you. Chair, I would refer you with the greatest respect to standing orders where it stipulates the chair's decision can be challenged.
I've already made my position abundantly clear. I'm now moving on to the next item on the agenda. And the next
Chair,
item on the agenda
I wish under standing orders to challenge the chair's decision. That then would incline for a vote to be carried out and amongst the members, Chair.
Councillor Lennon, can I now direct you away from Standing Order 14 to Standing Order 50?
Again, Chair.
Standing Order 50 is disregarding the authority of the chair.
Absolutely not.
If you want to disregard the authority of the chair, then I'll ask for a motion from the floor to exclude you from the meeting.
Oh no! Oh no!
So, I'm now moving
Chair,
on. And
Chair, I'm actually point of order, Chair.
Sorry.
Point of
I'm
order.
not going to
Point
indulge
of
you any
order.
more, Councillor Lennon.
Chair, it's a point of order's been raised. I've already asked you. Have the monitoring officer sitting next to you. I'm challenging you under your decision under Standing Order 14. This is, there's nothing untoward in that.
Councillor Lennon, you're not saying anything that I've not responded to on 2 previous occasions. On the basis of that, I'm now asking for your mic to be muted. Rachel,
Chair,
Mark,
I have
so
to...
please. Right, we now move on, please, to item 10, complaints handling and update. Stephen, please. Sorry, in terms, if we just go on to item 9, the recommendations there, you agree to the recommendations? Okay.
Agreed.
We now move on to item 10, complaints handling and update.
And the convener of that committee, Jim Logue, the leader of the council, had gone through 8 agenda items previous to that. So introductions, you know, people...
Officer, the officers leading on this.
So for agenda items 2, 3, 4, every paper that was put, it was... so we're going to discuss whatever it is, and officer is going to take us through.
Thematic audit transformation report, and ask Stephen Penman to highlight the salient points. Stephen, please.
Thank you, Convener. On this
an IT strategy, and Greg will speak to this report. Greg, please.
Thanks, Convener. Good afternoon, everyone.
Be well policy is in pages 11 to 70. I'm going to ask Lyle Rennie to introduce this, and then Gillian Finnegan to further elaborate on the specifics in the report. Lyle first, and then Gillian, please.
Thanks, Leader. This report provides an update.
Review of capital delivery 24-25. Greg, you wish to highlight salient points?
Thanks, Convener. So this is the first report of its kind.
Report, and that's the contract awards below committee approval threshold. And the report here is for noting. Do we agree? That concludes the business. Thank you for your attendance. Item 9, the review of the Council's Democratic Committee and decision-making governance procedures. I've been advised that Councillor Lennon, in accordance with Standing Order 25, has submitted an amendment. Can I ask committee services to hand out the amendment, please? And Mark, could you ensure that all members who are joined online have access to the amendment as well?
What happened when we came to item 9?
Oh, it was straight to the amendment for a ruling on competency.
Straight to the amendment.
So for the good folk at home, the reason there was an amendment submitted to this was because there is a deep held belief within really anybody at all that can independently think in that council, which is few and far between, is the position would be that the leader has basically set that council up in such a way where local representation no longer exists. It's done. It's finished.
Pretty much.
Democracy is dead within that council. So the position is normally what happens is if you go to raise anything at all within committee, the convener can shut it down right away. If it's not got prior approval from the leader of the council, it's not getting on any agenda. So you can't basically raise an issue, let's say housing for talking's sake, that you want to argue the point for new bills to come to your local ward area because that's what the people are telling you. No chance. If you want to talk about your Wayne's education, you want to change something within that, Future Fridays perhaps, let's say we want to get rid of Future Fridays and bring back the school day to make sure that the kids are at school until 4 or 5 p.m. on a Friday, no chance. If you're looking to bring anything at all forward to any agenda, you have got a snowball's chance in hell of even getting that on. But we don't stop there, Jerry. We take it to full council as well, because again, the old El Provosto ends up that he can decide on anything at all, whether it's competent or not, with no benchmarking, no scoring matrix, absolutely hee-haw, whether he likes you or no, and that's the only premise of what has to go through in council.
I think we have to be honest with ourselves as elected members, 77 of us, and we collectively let ourselves down last Thursday by not insisting that this most important item was discussed at length, that the officer was given the chance to speak to the paper that they presented to council. So you never get the opportunity to present your amendment.
Nope.
Right? I was seconder to that amendment. What I never got the opportunity to say to the rest of the councillors on that policy and strategy committee, and that there's 77 councillors, but there's only 25 on that committee itself. But what we never got the chance to say to them was that, considering who was leading this review, right? Elected members didn't write that report that came to the policy and strategy committee. It was written by an officer. Right? That the chief officer, legal and democratic, was set up to be both the project sponsor and the senior responsible officer. Right? So they're heading it up. The democratic manager was to act as a project manager. So essentially,
my goodness,
we had officers setting the agenda, drafting the options, and managing the timetable.
The timeline.
The timeline running right up until December 2026. And we have elections just a few short months after that.
What's the guarantee with that is all these newly elected members that come into that chamber, whoever they may be, they're not going to have a clue about any of this. So by the time they actually catch up, then you're talking about 4 or 5 years before they're even at a stage understanding what the rules of the game are.
So that's one. That's the first element of it. The second element is the report frames that member involvement will take the shape of workshops, consultations, and quarterly monitoring. Right? However, this engagement was only going to be reactive rather than proactive. So there's no insight in how you're going to resolve any of this.
Co-production.
No co-production.
Not even a working group. They all like a working group in that council.
Not even a note to say.
Member working group.
Not a note to say how disagreement would be resolved. So if an officer says we want to have the power to make legal agreements that impact on our budgets,
right?
If, for example, we get involved in a contract negotiation and it doesn't go well, and we're taken to court, and we settle out of court, as an elected member, I want to know about that, and I want to understand how we ended up in that position. I want to understand if there's a budgetary implication. For example, if we were sued for £45 million or £31 million or whatever it was, if I wanted to make sure that I was involved in that, an officer can determine from this whether or not that will take place.
Whether anybody finds out about it,
or whether anybody finds out about it, because those. So these are the kind of important things that we should have been discussing.
I think again the biggest thing for me at that time, I knew the leader would shut that down. I knew he would do everything, because you have to submit an amendment 24 hours in advance now, because that was the rule change that he implemented. You have to make sure it's there so that they've got 24 hours to find a way of shutting you down and not allowing anything at all to be debated. The most concerning point is, Jerry, during that whole debacle, the complete and utter pantomime, a ridiculousness that is the council leader, we had the leader of the opposition group make a statement that when the amendment was to be shared, it was to be shared by email and it was to be shared online via the screens,
so that all the members could have a look at it, because they don't have sight of that prior to.
5 minutes was allocated. I think they spent about 3 minutes with it on the screen. Then the leader of the opposition comes in. Can it be sent via email? Yes, it's going to be sent via email. And about a minute passes and then all of a sudden it comes back again. I've not read that, I've not received it yet, but I would like to hear the view of the monitoring officer.
Councillor Logue, I'm happy to hear what Rachel has to say while we wait on that. Very happy to hear that in the first instance.
So basically, giving you an in to try and get it ruled incompetent. So if you've got elected members even reading the amendment to see whether or not there's any substance behind that in the first place, either A, you are the laziest individual in the planet, or B, you're actually that clueless that you can't understand what's actually taking place, because really in effect the elected member is going to have any democratic process.
But the standing orders and the whole Gold Command issue is something that the SNP were pushing for in our time during it.
Nope, I didn't. Nope, I stood up against it. I wanted the Gold Command minutes
No,
published.
they're speaking against it, so they were fighting that side. But then it seems that in the last year and a half, it just seems to be anything against progressive change. Would that be a fair assessment?
That's a very fair assessment.
Here's some of the questions that I think that we wanted to ask. These are the specific questions that I wanted to ask, right? I wanted to find out if we were genuinely shaping the council's governance framework, or whether or not we were merely rubber stamping an officer-designed plan.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to urge the committee, the members of that committee, if I'd got a chance to put this to them, which I didn't, to consider the following critical points, Greg and Cammy, right? To ask who truly sets the agenda for this review, because we as members were not consulted on the paper before its presentation at the committee. I wanted to find out if members would be able to propose alternative frameworks, or only to respond to the pre-drafted options of the officers. I wanted to ask how feedback from workshops would influence the final decisions. And I wanted to find out how we will ensure that citizen engagement and scrutiny are not limited to procedural formalities. And that's just standing orders, Greg. Because really that's what that is.
Yeah.
We pretend that we are going through citizen engagement by ensuring that minutes are available. We refer to standing orders, but in actual fact, it's pseudo participation.
The petitions process, there has been thousands upon thousands of individuals that have signed petitions over the last couple of years, and again, there is a petition out there just now that Jim Logue should resign. It's sitting with about 550 signatories. I wonder if there'll be a push on this after tonight's show. But the key point in that is in relation to these petitions, they've set it up in such a way, they changed the rules in December 2024, Jerry, because the petitions were coming problematic for them. They just couldn't identify a process that they were content in sticking with. So when the numbers start to rise, 2,000, 3,000 individuals signing a petition, they're absolutely lost. They don't know what to do with that. And officers have to come to their defence. Now, funnily enough, Jerry, the irony in all this is, there was a full council in March this year where the SNP group leader and her deputy made an argument, and they made the argument on the basis of how this council's ran. And that is,
I remember
priceless, absolutely priceless. And then to sit in their hands at a policy and strategy meeting and say hee-haw about how this council is ran is quite hypocritical, and it completely sums up the leadership and the calibre individual within that grouping.
Greg, that agenda item was passed over so quickly, right? And we actually moved on.
Funnily enough, Jerry, I've got it.
Well, we actually moved on to another agenda item before the convener, the leader of the council, even sought approval. So keen was he to move on, he forgot to ask for members to approve that.
Right, we now move on, please, to item 10, complaints handling and update. Stephen, please. Sorry, in terms, if you just want item 9, the recommendations there, you agree to the recommendations? Okay.
Agreed.
We now move on to item 10, complaints handling and update.
Now, when he did that, I'm assuming that the leader of the opposition, the leader of the SNP, and that other influential councillor from Coatbridge, I'm assuming that they commented to say, no, we're not wanting to approve this until we have asked serious questions about this review.
Absolutely not. They were quite happy for everything to go through.
But I remember them speaking so powerfully back in March
that's
about...
what I'm saying. So you've got to ask yourself, really, in effect, is the payroll in full effect? Because ultimately this is what it's coming down to. It's coming down to key individuals are paid for position, coming after the leader of the council. And is there any democracy left in North Lanarkshire Council?
I think
that is it.
It's heading on down that rail track.
It is an absolute dictatorship. There is no doubt in my mind about El Presidente and his Duma that he is absolutely in control of. But the worst bit about it is you've got a Tory sitting as the chair of audit and scrutiny, the very same committee that should be looking at decisions being made of this ilk, and they have hee-haw power, absolutely zero. And then again you ask yourself, is there a reason for that? Is that absolutely under the control of the leader? And then you look at the opposition leader happy to sit in their hands and not even read an amendment because it doesn't matter, because just going to refer to the monitoring officer.
See, as it's presented, Greg, and it's going through now, right? So there's nothing that we can do about it. But as that's presented, the review is going to do a little more than be a tick box
here's hoping
exercise.
That there rise a smaller political parties in North Lanarkshire, that there's enough of them to come in and rip them all apart, because the SNP don't deserve your vote, Labour don't deserve your vote, and the Tories sure the hell don't deserve your vote. So they've absolutely given it away. I mean, by not speaking up, by not contesting this report as it was put to the committee, we have given unfettered power to officers to control entirely the process of this review, and we're handing democracy away without any check or balance. I checked the video footage earlier. Councillor Alan Stubbs stated at that last full council meeting that this is becoming an officer-led council, that it could be accused of that. And in addition to that as well, we're really entering into territory of the former MP Stephen Bonner MP.
Yes, Stephen Bonner
stipulated that this is an officer-led council. So everybody's of that opinion. Perhaps that is the case. But an interesting point for you, Jerry. This committee, I wasn't thrown out, although I was threatened again, Cameron. I was threatened.
Were you silenced?
He'll be taking standing order 50 off us for the floor.
Oh no! Oh no!
If Councillor Lennon does they shut up. But basically the position was I was muted, Jerry. Now, you would think that if it's a case and a point of order's been raised in that chamber, you're meant to hear the point of order. But what we're finding is again, no political opposition's up in arms in relation to the treatment of members in that chamber. It's absolutely shocking, because again, what are they going to say? Because they're just going to have all sorts of things thrown back at them in relation to their previous leader. So they're very, very scared to open their mouth in relation to the administration. And then the others in there are just sitting in their hands and completely perfectly silent.
I think half of them don't even know what's going on half the time. I think it's a wee nudge, raise your hand, press this button, press that button. I think most of them's probably
get the money
and one ear, one out the other.
Get the money for doing hee-haw. That's basically it. Again, there's a few councillors out there that I'm going to. I think we should do a deep dive into, by the way, how much involvement with their attendance figures, etc. are, and for what they're getting the money. I think that would be interesting as a deep dive, Jerry, to take a wee look at that, because there's certain individuals that I know don't attend any meetings, public meetings, surgeries, anything at all. And again, I think that's something that if I'm electing a councillor, that's something that I want to know, whether or not these people are actually delivering on what they're saying they're delivering on.
Greg, I'm not normally a member of the Policy and Strategy Committee, but people need to know that committee is the second most powerful committee within North Lanarkshire Council. It's where the strategic direction is set. And council ratifies many other things, but the Policy and Strategy Committee is a really important committee. Councillor Damasio couldn't make it, and I had to stand in for him, and was genuinely hoping against hope, I guess, that we were going to have some meaningful debate on a critical point. And I was so disappointed in the lack of desire to have any debate about the way the council functions, the way it will function, and its set direction for the next, because this is going to shape the next 5 years at the end of this one. So this is the shape to 2032.
Everything, what services are getting cut, everything is off.
And members could not be bothered to even debate it. It was absolutely disgusting conduct.
Again, I think it's really important to point out we're no sore on this. I think that's something that's really important to highlight, because again, there's no angry position on our part or anything at all. It does just seem to be that it's so stitched up that is it. There is no arguing towards it. However, from your standpoint, I think it's imperative that the people at home know.
They need
because,
to know.
Again, if you do have a decent elected member and they're trying their hardest to get out there and fight your corner, these are the challenges that they're up against. And I think that lack of democratic position or lack of discourse that takes place in a chamber, well, this is all by design. Every single bit is by design.
I'll turn the tables onto yours. What was the last good thing North Lanarkshire done for the public? Personally, I think it was Club 365. I think that was one of the better things North Lanarkshire done. North Lanarkshire done, and then they shut it down. So that they blamed everybody except themselves.
You had Kilbowie in there as well. Every kid in the authority get the opportunity to go and have a life experience in Kilbowie. Would the Jim Logue decide? No anymore. That's it. It's gone. And again, taking away that idea of young people being able to have that rite of passage.
Most of the young people as well, a lot of my friends were at that age when they went to Kilbowie. Most of them from a deprived background, and that was the only holiday that most of them got. Most years was going to Kilbowie.
Swimming
again.
Gone. Football pitches. Gone.
Next one's libraries.
They tried to do it. The
ACC still alive and well.
Do you know, and we spoke about this last week, but it's important that we remind people at home that the last time they tried to close libraries, swimming pools, leisure centres and all the rest of it, the council used the period during lockdown to justify
the figures,
doing it. Footfall, including that period. Quite remarkable. Quite remarkable.
But again, listen, and again, this is the bit about it. We presented an opportunity, and as I say I mean elected members in North Lanarkshire, presented Jim Logue the opportunity, because ultimately the SNP elected a leader, in my opinion, who was not fit to hold the position of leader. If due diligence was done and proper checks and balances were conducted, then that administration potentially, then they could have still won the vote in relation, because people had enough of Labour at that time. They could have potentially had an alternative available in North Lanarkshire, something that could have been plausible and credible. However, what they had was 8 weeks of an SNP group that didn't have the opportunity to change one thing. There was nothing at all there. Now, you and I often talk to people whose conspiracy is Jim Logue set that all up. But what he was obviously an opportunist, because he got his wee Tory pals to jump right on board with him. He managed to entice 2 SNP members out the SNP group to go and take paid positions. And that's basically how he ended up where he ended up. Now, if you think about it right now, and as it stands numbers-wise, he doesn't need the Tories anymore.
No.
He does not need them anymore. And you've got to ask yourself, why would you continue to use somebody that you don't need? Because he's ultimately taking away that payment for one of his own group members. So, is it a case that Sandy and Co know where the skeletons are buried? Or is it a case that they're just going to nod along when required? What one do you think it is?
Why not a bit of both?
Could be.
Everybody's happy.
Makes the Tories relevant in North Lanarkshire, I suppose, because without that they're a complete and utter irrelevance.
You compare it to 2017, there was 10 Tories elected. Last time there was 5 elected. The rise of reform, realistically, they're sticking in for final payday. I think the way the polls are going, there's not going to be any Tories left in North Lanarkshire.
You're talking about the parachute payments, Cameron? Is that what you're talking about?
I mean the actual wage for the last year and a half until 2027.
Well, again, this is the bit about it. If you look at the wages and the salaries of these individuals, we did it again last week when we spoke about Burgess, Sandy Watson, others.
The pension contributions.
The pension contributions and everything else. And again, even if it's a case that you're a pensioner and you're earning that kind of, it's a full-time salary equivalent for many. So the issue here is if you look at the council, why change it? Because they're not interested in changing it. They need the status quo. But I get back to that point. The administration was the SNP. He managed to form a way to get the numbers back in there again to take on this council. And that's the issue. The issue is that. So the SNP, in my opinion, let the people in North Lanarkshire down. Fundamentally, let them down because they promised change and delivered hee-haw.
We did.
And I think about a bombshell, when you speak to anybody within the Labour Party, they actively say that it's a matter of when and not if. They knew the administration would fall at some point, not how it did. They thought it would last a number of years before it fell, but they knew that they'd be in charge before the next council election.
Wow.
Did they know that it was going to be around
I don't think so.
issues to do with personal conduct? No. Or
I don't think it did when you speak to some of them. I think realistically that group was never going to last in its best times. There was people in there who were already eyeing their way into the Labour Party. There was people who can go right back to our previous terms. There was friendships there between
with the Labour leader and the SNP leader that was second to none.
Aye.
And it was such a close relationship, Jerry. I always used to find that absolutely amazing. Now, yes, you have friends in politics, absolutely.
Sometimes it is cross-party as well. But
100%. But the level of friendship that existed between those two, I just found it bizarre. You're meant to be the main opposition. How can you be best pals with that individual?
It can't be any cosier than it is now. It cannot be any cosier than it is now.
It was a lot cosier than what it is now.
Wow.
Because at least this SNP leader hides it. So it's canned outrage. You're seeing canned outrage every now and again.
I think there's pictures of the two previous leaders sitting beside each other, and now there's arguments that are not sitting beside each other.
Well, I think it'll be interesting in all the coming weeks, especially as things start to develop in Dundee. What you're going to have is individuals that are still existing. Lord Provost is a prime example of that. Relationships and friendships that exist within that SNP group, especially individuals who are prominent figures of that whole debacle and the sort of shenanigans that took place after departures. Where are these individuals? Where are these friendships? Are they still ongoing? Were they ceased immediately? I think there'll be a lot of questions, especially for the press to be asking about what kind of happened.
I think there's an awful lot of miles left in that story. And over the next few weeks they'll be borne out, no doubt.
Again, coming back to SNP vetting, why was that individual allowed to proceed under those vetting conditions? And that's the questions that has to be asked.
Well, I think we discussed some people were vetted and some people were
just
how you doing, how you getting on, okay, we'll see you next year, a couple of years time.
And then if you look at this council group in the news that exists within the SNP, well, it's your best pal is now a councillor, your wife's a councillor, your wife's best pal's now a councillor. It's quite fascinating in relation to the individuals that have been elected.
Indeed.
And the sort of cronyism, because again, as I said, my biggest criticism of Labour all the years has always been right back to the Blair days, was the level of nepotism and cronyism that existed within that party. You look at that SNP group, my goodness, there's going to be anything more nepotistic and crony.
I think the biggest indictment for the SNP is that despite the fact that this is an indictment on both Labour and the SNP. Labour should be flying high. You know,
on the polls.
The SNP have been in power for 18, 19 years almost in Scotland, and they should be falling off a cliff.
Yeah.
And right now the polls would suggest that Labour are back where they were in 2021, and the SNP are the ones sitting flying high, but they cannot muster enough interest to get enough candidates to run for council. And it'll be the same this year.
Here's the point that I would make in this, right? And again, this isn't. I'm just highlighting individuals. Let's say there's a Coatbridge councillor who's brother to the MSP in that area. How many times, because you and I were elected at the same time as that individual, many times has he contributed at a council meeting, and many times has he contributed at a committee? Many times you heard that individual speak?
Once maximum.
Once, in almost approaching 10 years. He's spoke once at one committee.
And even within the own political wills of group meetings, I could probably a handful of times in one hand.
Well, what I've seen is, it's one more than me, might add, because I've seen absolutely zero. But the point I would make here is, if you look at when that council term started, it was like everybody jumping in to get the motions and getting and trying to put forward these motions. Some right bizarre, mental, crazy things that are being presented by those individuals, and clearly no aware the constitution of the council. But again, when they're presenting these motions, it seemed to me that they were all just trying to fight their name out there so they can sit in the back. No, I've done my bit. I put forward a motion at the very start of that 5-year term.
Here's the embarrassment, Greg. Council only sits 4 times a year. So council is the opportunity for motions to be put forward, to be considered by the members, all 77 of them, to be debated, for amendments to be brought forward, for, you know, composites to take place. That just means that if your amendment and somebody else's amendment are similar, you work together to combine it and into one. So there's collaboration there. This time around, and it's not the first time that this has happened, there's one motion.
Oh, but there's zero collaboration that exists unless it's with the leader.
There's one motion, Greg.
Yeah.
Of the 77 councillors there's one motion.
Well,
I had 4 refused.
I
had 4 refused.
I had 1 refused myself. But what I'm going to do is I want to come on to that, because I think that's an important talking point after the break. So we'll stop for a couple of songs. But when we come back, I do want to look at the Lord Provost's power in relation to motions. Because if I was just Joe Bloggs, not understanding how the council operates or works, I want to see progressive proposals coming forward. I want to see collaborative working. I want to see all these different things happening within that council chamber, but it's actually non-existent. The reason it's non-existent is due to the level of power that this individual wields. He does not score, he does not do anything, he just says competent or not competent. And again, that's been confirmed by the council's most senior solicitor and council monitor.
No, I mean, it's there in black and white in the standing orders that nobody wants to debate or challenge.
Maybe you just need to try and get him on a good day.
I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's the case, especially with his own personal issues that's taking place at the moment. I don't think he's going to have many good days. But anyway, listen, I'm going to jump to a wee couple of songs, and when we come back we'll look at that actual process and how much power these individuals actually wield. Welcome back to What's the Point? That was Snap and I Have the Power. Jerry, I can see Jim Logue shuffling his shooters up in the Airdrie Bowling Club to that one. That's for sure. My goodness. And now talking about power, Cameron, we're going to come on to the point that I raised just before we cut for a break. And that point is democracy dead in North Lanarkshire?
In a word?
Yes.
Cammy?
Possibly. Who's holding the cards?
At full council, it's the Provost. It's absolutely the Provost.
And he is the blocker, the buffer, the bounty hunter.
Well, he's the gatekeeper, or she's the gatekeeper, whoever whoever holds that position. But they determine what is debated. They determine what motions are acceptable, which amendments to motions are acceptable, and ultimately can quash the debate in that chamber. And that's what I mean. We sort of make fun about it being the non-debating chamber, because there's no debate goes on in it anymore. It is absolutely like the Presidentium in North Korea, or the Duma
I've just
in
had
Russia.
A text there. Did it ever exist in North Lanarkshire? That's maybe a question.
Well, it did, Greg, because I watched old videos. I watched old videos of webcasts of not that long ago, certainly last council term. There was some brilliant debate. Now, absolutely nothing.
I can remember times we were sat in the chamber until 8, half 8, we're having to go to have to stop debate rather than pull it towards the next day to continue the debate. But now, to be fair, you could book your dinner table for 5 o'clock. You could book your dinner table for 3 o'clock. You still make it in time.
It's absolutely shambolic within that chamber now if you look at it, because ultimately, as I said again, I'm not going to keep hammering on about what the make-up of the council is and the individuals that's involved in it, but I agree with you. I had to look back over all council meetings, and I looked back to say the defining date for me, by the way, is the COVID pandemic. That's when everything really changed, because the delegation of authority started to happen at that point. And it is evidently clear for anybody that goes back and watches the YouTube sort of clips that exist of all councils that the debate was still taking place even during the pandemic. But what we started to see was an erosion. It started to be that the administration was relying on the officers to shoot down any elected member that was trying to bring in discourse.
Do you know what the administration believed to be a success? The streamlining of the standing orders. They believe that to be a success, and effectively what that is, Greg, is that you can't raise any business on the day. Everything's got to be pre-submitted 24 hours before a committee if you want to submit.
Well, that was the point of the amendment. The point of the amendment was if you want to have a proper governance review, why not have a proper governance review?
Yeah.
Let's look at amendment submission. Let's look at motion submission. Why is the Lord Provost allowed to operate someone who is meant to be politically neutral? He is not meant to be a Labour member sitting in that role. No. He is meant to be the civic head of the council. Now, again, the issue, I know this, if anybody at all looks into North Lanarkshire Council, any publication on social media pages, it's only the administration that appears in
Absolutely, yeah.
Any motions coming forward to recognise any individual councillor for their achievements, again, unless it's the administration, absolutely not. Nothing's coming forward. Motions seem to have been absolutely dwindled away to absolute irrelevance and nonsense, and if it's not really anything at all that's going to keep the agenda focused on a national debate about independence or unionism, then that's basically it. It's a pantomime, it's a load of garbage.
I think some of the rules they've brought in, it has to relate to North Lanarkshire Council. I agree with, there's no point in us debating the current status of New South Wales and Australia when it's got nothing to do with North Lanarkshire, to be fair. But then you've got top of that, it has to have a financial spending and cost related to it.
Well, I disagree, because I think if the council was to put forward a motion in relation to Gaza for elected members in that chamber to have a position, yes, we will not make a national decision on that, but to show solidarity and support, 100%. The motion in relation to the miners' strikes, absolutely, 100% our council considering the industrial past of this authority, yes, definitely we should be supporting anything at all going down to Westminster in relation to having these individuals receive full pension, etc., and also for their criminal convictions to be quashed. I see that as absolutely legitimate for that council. What I don't see is legitimacy for individuals sitting in that chamber is to talk about nonsense and drivel. Let's commend individuals who have potentially served 17 years within the council, because this is the motion, the only single motion that's coming through, and let's commend them. Well,
and it is about officers. It's
an officer. Again, how's that affecting wee Jeannie's pocket? What change is that making to Stevie's life? There is absolutely nothing in that. Now, Louise Murphy, who was on before us, actually had we were at that policy and strategy committee, and we had the big presentation. Look how fantastic North Lanarkshire is. We are the best in the country. We are above all reproach. Look at how brilliant we are. Our economic figures are staggering. Our unemployment is at a record low. And again, coming back to the point Louise made, is this just massaging figures? Because ultimately we have got more development taking place in this authority than anything else. The house prices alone are staggering. And if you're moving here fully employed, and your job is probably elsewhere in Glasgow or in wherever it is. Now, the issue here is again, these figures don't seem to match, because if you're growing the population as opposed to having less people claiming benefits, then really in effect the council, in my opinion, is just becoming a place of smoke and mirrors.
The figures that are used, and the council use these figures to promote themselves as being, a high performing, improving area, and that's all well and good, right? The reality is that salaries following the banking crash in 2008 have not reached parity yet, even now. No. So the wages that people are making is not the same as the wages that people were making in 2008. And we took to the high rafters about how great we are and our salaries are going up. Our salaries are going up because there's been hyperinflation over the last 6-7 years, and that has inflated the weekly wage, but the value of the weekly wage, what the pound buys you each week, has not kept pace. So the whole thing about smoke and mirrors, and that's a good point actually. The thing about smoke and mirrors and the council decision making, the role of the Provost and all the rest of it. You spoke about the role of the Provost being one where he is the civic leader. He's a neutral figure within.
You would think so.
Well, he's a neutral, or she or he, whoever's fulfilling that role, is neutral when they're not in the chamber. But see, when they're in the chamber, they have a vote. So they're not that neutral, because they can vote, they will vote, and they do vote, and they normally vote with the administration.
You go back to before Kenny Duffy was elected into the position of Lord, or put into the position, I'm saying elected, Zibby even stood any contest in that. But before Kenny Duffy was put in there, he had Jean Jones in there. Now, Jean Jones was many things, but one thing she was fair. And that was the difference of Jean Jones. Jean Jones at least let people speak. She'd try and calm the situation down. She would threaten quite a lot of the time. She was about to stand up and that kind of thing, which is really, really bad if you're a councillor and your Provost stands up. But do you know something? I'll give Jean Jones a due. Jean Jones tried to encourage debate within the chamber.
Do you know what I liked? I was watching, I know, sorry, can't to jump in, but I was watching old reruns of council, right? And amendments had been brought up, and some of them had been deemed from the floor. But some of them had been deemed not competent, right, because of a small aspect of it. And do you know what the role of the chair is in those circumstances?
To decide.
To make it possible for debate, to encourage debate, not to quash it.
So we end up in a twilight zone now in North Lanarkshire. And again, although I'm saying Jean Jones was a credible Lord Provost, that was the start, in my opinion, in relation to the erosion of debate in the chamber, because what used to happen was, especially online, I'm passing to the monitoring officer for advice. And when the monitoring officer gives that advice, there is nobody in that position with confidence then to turn around and say, do you know what, I'm actually going to go against that advice. I'm actually going to let the debate
They don't need to take the advice.
Don't need to take the advice. But the way it's been kind of pegged up, what you're seeing is legislation's quoted at the back of the monitoring officer's advice now, and you can see it's an absolute facade, it's a show. But the point of it being, for me, is where does the individual, do you think it's coming down to now that every council group in there, the SNP, Labour, the Tories, do they either not have the confidence or the skill set to be able to have that debate? Are they not there anymore? Or is it a case that they're actually quite happy that they've got individuals into positions that aren't really equipped to understand whether it's New Year or New York?
Goes back to the previous point, is any time there's any sort of questions or comments made, rather than the chair or the provost or the convener making their input or making a decision, it's always, we'll go to the officer. There's no intellectual background, I think, and I think that's probably a standards complaint there, to be fair.
No, listen.
But I feel like they always hide behind the officers. If you were to ask an operational question to the convener who should know the answer, and they're just like, we'll go to the officer.
Cameron, again, and this is something that we've toyed with all the last year and a bit, because obviously there will be a significant number of standards complaints in about Jerry and I, and this is our genuine held opinion and belief. We're no saying anything at all here that we think is personal attack on any individual. This is 100% political, and it's within our gift to say anything at all that we want in relation to the politics. The fact remains, you've got a governance review taking place. It's officer written, so that's confirmed. It's an officer written thing.
Timetables, officer written, led by officers.
The webcasts are there and they're identifiable, and anybody at all with half an interest could go on and view the leader of that council refer to these officers and look to shoot that debate down. The more interesting point that I think starting to come out all the time now is the opposition in this, because again it's demonstrated that they are just looking today as they're told, and again backroom group leaders meetings and all this kind of stuff. Does that take place? 100% that's taking place. 100%.
I think one of there's a simpler explanation for it, Greg, right? The webcast and the use of the webcast by individuals like ourselves who clip pieces of those webcasts, clip the performance of conveners, clip the performance of members, etc., and parade that on social media. I think that is one of the reasons why there's no debate in that chamber anymore. Well, I think that's why motions that are brought forward are not challenged with amendments. It's to keep everything unclippable.
Well, here's the interesting. This is the interesting thing, Cameron. So Jerry and I played a wee game when we went into policy and strategy the other day. It was quite amusing for us. We were howling. So the point was at the very start of the meeting, because what we're seeing is a pattern. Every single time there's a contentious issue, Cameron, there is microphone issues, audio issues within the chamber, right? And it's always the case.
Hold on, Greg.
I can't hear you there.
Greg,
I'm
can you hear me?
Councillor Lennon. I can't make. Can anybody else in the chamber make out what Councillor Lennon's saying? No, nobody in the chamber can hear it. So what we did was, Jerry and I thought it would be quite amusing to raise a point of order at the very, very beginning of the meeting to ask,
just to check,
can you clarify that my microphone is working without an issue, and can everybody hear me in the chamber? Jim Logue's response to that was quite funny. I'm struggling to hear you, Greg. I'm struggling to hear you. Okay then, can I ask for a recess to be called so that the microphones can be checked and any technical issue can be overcame? That's it, we're fine. Can you hear me fine now? No problem. That's we're good to go. And then again, my goodness, these people are absolutely idiotic, but you couldn't make it up.
No.
You really, really couldn't make it up. But anyway, we've got a few questions coming in tonight, right? If councillors aren't allowed to speak, propose amendments or challenge decision, then what's the point in electing them? Well, that's a very, very good point.
Do you know, it's actually counterproductive in a way, right? Because it does not allow elected members to find their feet, right?
Yeah.
Or to find their voices, or to find their political kind of self. And I think if I was still a member of the SNP, I would not be.
I'd be kicked out.
Well, we would have been kicked out, but we would not be as effective communicators. We certainly wouldn't be as knowledgeable about council business than we are now.
There is no way in this earth that you could sit with any level of integrity and sit back and watch this absolute nonsense take place. I was ready to say a sweary word, and thank goodness I didn't say it. But you could not sit back with any level or even decency or integrity and watch what unfolds in there.
Greg, see the ones who can, even those councillors, and you know the ones that I'm on about, particularly the ones on the Labour benches who have been sidetracked and silenced. Some really competent councillors whose prominence has kind of fallen off the roof.
Jerry, these certain individuals who led that revolt against that leader the last time, well, there's certain individuals that are now office managers. There's certain individuals who are working for the prominent MP or the MSP. Are they going to do anything new to upset that gravy train salary? Absolutely not.
Wages,
and
mortgages.
And listen, again, whether people agree or disagree, whatever, it doesn't really matter. The point still remains, unless there's debate, there is no change. And so that's the critical point to this. Right, another question I've got, and you'll like this one, Cameron. I think I'll leave this to you to answer. How can council officers be making more decisions than elected members, and why isn't this being publicly challenged by party leaders?
salaries. There's individuals. There's, like I said earlier, there's a lot of councillors in positions where they've no education, knowledge, experience, and are living off the information that they get from councillors. And a completely different podcast I was listening to earlier on, and there was a guy talking about how the FBI in America prefer presidents that know nothing about national intelligence because they can manipulate them, they can make decisions, they can lead them certain ways and make them feel as if they are the smartest person in the room. And 9 times out of 10, I think that's what's happening across the council.
I think it's worse than that, though. I think the administration in North Lanarkshire prefer it to be that way. People need to accept and understand that Labour have always run North Lanarkshire Council.
Always.
And the more...
Going back to the Monklands and Labour's involvement in all the scandal-ridden Monklands Council.
Yeah.
Jim Logue was part of Monklands Council. No saying he was involved in any scandal, but him and Tommy Morgan are out there, and they were the ones that were challenging McCabe and others at that time. Again, these big freedom fighters that were there to overrule governance and take on the I wouldn't say corruption, but along their lines.
But that you look at old press cuttings. Corrupt. When you talk about North Lanarkshire, that's the word that comes up. Corruption, scandals.
Yeah.
But as far as I'm concerned, given that I'm a relatively new councillor, first term, looking at the environment that we're operating in right now, the administration are served better if they can blame someone else for those decisions. So the more responsibility they give to officers, the less political responsibility they have to take.
For the podcast, I'm going to go back.
And if you're critical, guess who they blame? They blame you and me and you, because rather than having the ability to point fingers at political opponents, because that power's been given to the officers, you're not allowed to point a finger at the officer, and if you do, you get a standards complaint. So it's the most cowardly form of power grab, if you like, that we're ever going to see.
To be perfectly honest, and that leads me nicely to this. Before I come to this question, by the way, that's a lovely segue, but I'm just going to ruin it.
Don't ask me for money.
I'll put in the motion that we're talking about in relation to the full council. We'll also splice in the Jim Lowe comments in regards to the podcast, just for folk at home. We were going to play it tonight, but it's too long and winded. But we'll make sure it's cut into that. Last question for the evening. Has North Lanarkshire Council become too toxic for independent-minded councillors to function?
Yes.
100% yes, I would say. 100%.
A strident yes.
Yeah.
Strident yes. If you're prepared to sit down, shut up, do what you're told, keep your job in your constituency office, then you might progress from councillor to candidate for MP or candidate for MSP, or be promised a place on the list for Holyrood. That's just the way that it works. Be a good boy and girl, toe the party line, do what you're told, and you'll progress. But we're not interested in your politics. We're not interested in your point of view, per se. Just sit there, vote, shout motion, shout amendment when we tell you to do it, and do nothing else. Otherwise, your political career is going to be wrecked.
Cammy, given the fact that, and I hope you don't mind me asking you this question, right? But given the fact that you are a young councillor, and they're still young, modestly in terms to the rest of us, you were elected when you were 19 years of age. You've practically done 10 years. You're coming up to 10 years at a public life. Would you do it again?
If you asked me after the first year, no. I remember after we first got elected, we had one of the meetings in the council, and there was a Labour councillor, no longer there now, that was making jokes referencing me about work experience. So it was because of my age, and just so happens I got more than 3 times the vote than that individual did, in their words. There's individuals still within the council that used to always refer to me as young man or wee boy. So as they walk past me, even one-on-one outside the chamber. So I think it's a very degrading environment, they'll try and get like a foothold or a stranglehold over the top of you. But you just hit them back with what you're looking at.
But again, if you take on board that majority of these individuals are former taxi drivers, here, by the way, the amount of taxi drivers that were in the Labour group, I've nothing against taxi drivers, by the way, but the amount of taxi drivers that are in that, the education convener, the housing convener, my goodness, there is a number of them. But the point that I would make is again, having that sort of brash approach, there isn't any sort of, I don't know if there's a case of individuals coming from various backgrounds in there and not really having that professional aspect to how to deal with other individuals. Within the debating chamber, I think it's pretty fair to have a political debate with somebody, and if nuance is part of that and jovialness is part of that, then absolutely fine. But just to be absolutely rude, I find that absolutely bizarre.
I think the only person that actually contributed well and debated well within North Lanarkshire in the last 9 years that against used to was probably Tory Morgan. He used to was
a good orator.
A good orator. He could hold a conversation, an argument, very quick on his feet. I think, like you said earlier on, there's people in there who are left for a wage. They'll sit down, they'll raise their hand when they're asked to, they'll vote a certain way.
Yeah.
Some will even turn their mics on to vote. They'll shout to the officer just so that it doesn't get clipped or manipulated against them in a social media way.
But it's almost to the point now where you have to make a decision about whether you're even going to go into the chamber, because your purpose, your role within the chamber to debate, to argue, it isn't there. It's not there. So,
Jerry, I'm getting to the opinion, and this is something that is I've shared with you previously. What's the point of us attending any committees or any full councils? Because it's irrelevant. It's a complete and utter irrelevance.
No.
I can't go along there and make the point in relation to my constituents, because ultimately there's a mechanism in place where it's blocked by the Provost or blocked by the committee chair.
Yeah.
That really in effect can kick you out of chamber, can block your mic. Now, my mic was blocked in that policy and strategy committee.
You were muted?
I was muted because I kept raising a point of order to have my point raised. Now, under normal circumstances, council has to stop and allow you to make that point of order, but our El Presidente didn't want any debate on the subject of governance review. But the issue I've got is right, okay, we're past item 9, we're now into item 10 and 11, and I'm still blocked, I'm still muted. So you're not kicking me out now, you're just muting my mic. Now, choice being is I need to then get into the chamber. What's the point in getting into the chamber if that's the kind of relationship that you're having with the council?
Experience shows that will probably just section 50, article 50.
Bullying, there's no doubt about it, to block debate.
No, it's using you. No, they'll never bully you.
It's not that the veil fell, right?
Right.
But to me, it couldn't wait to move on from item 9, right? But one of the saddest things that happened during that whole debacle before we moved on to the next agenda item was that the monitoring officer made it pretty clear that almost all of your amendment actually met the criteria. There was one aspect of it, and that was around the audit and scrutiny committee. So in normal times, Jean Jones, for example, would have said, listen, what we can do is, I mean, most of your amendments fine, Greg. If you want to remove that aspect, then we'll continue with the debate. Yep. That happens if you want to have a debate. Yeah. See, if you don't want to have a debate, you jump straight onto the next topic, you mute your political opponent, you don't even... That paper was for approval of members. He didn't even ask members to approve it. He couldn't wait to jump on, and he shouldn't have been allowed to jump back.
Such a culture in North Lanarkshire now, and again we were subjected to this. But even if that did go to a debate and there was a rigorous debate in that, you're voting whatever way the group votes.
Yeah.
So you're whipped in relation to that vote. So there isn't free thinking in North Lanarkshire. No. You don't have Cameron can decide to go one way, you can abstain, and I'll fight the amendment. There's nothing there. There is no individual thought process.
Gregor,
you can check. There's numerous times you can actually go back and watch debates or any committee or full council, and you can check councillors lifting up their phones to check WhatsApp, because in WhatsApp it will say Abstain, motion, amendment. So you can see them constantly. Somebody will ping it in the text, and they'll all follow the whip, they'll follow the line.
It's absolutely Orwellian, there is no doubt.
Sometimes you might be allowed a wee toilet break. You get told there's going to be a wee vote in this article in section 8 of the so why don't you go to the toilet? It'll make you look good. It means when you come up for re-election, you didn't vote in that matter, you were in the toilet. Right,
Really quickly to finish off, because we're running out of time. Cameron, would you encourage anybody to stand for council?
No.
Jerry Brennan?
Absolutely not.
Would you?
Absolutely not.
If you're looking for a job out there, and that job's going to give you a really, really
caveat to
salary...
that. There's a caveat to that. Absolutely not. If your mindset before you enter is that you're going to contribute meaningfully to council business, that you're going to represent your constituents, you're going to argue, you're going to debate, you're going to fight their corner. If you believe that that's what being a councillor actually means, you can think again.
Well, I'm not
afraid.
going to articulate it like that. I'm going to say something a wee bit different. If you want a £25,978,000 a year job for doing very, very little, if you so require, if you're looking for progression within that to additional salaries of working in your MP or your MSP office, which last week when we uncovered could take you to roughly about £70,000 to £90,000 if so required. If you're looking for higher office to be an MSP on 70-odd thousand, or even an MP on £89,000 per year with cushy numbers to London and Edinburgh and everywhere that you want to go, or even if it's a case you want a European jolly like a YSI member, Cammy, I would fully encourage you to do it, but the only caveat in that is, A, you need no formal qualification, so you don't really need to worry about that, but if you are coming with formal qualification, be very prepared to deal with individuals who have no professional capacity whatsoever. And that's the difference in it. And on that bombshell,
well,
Jerry Brennan,
despite all that we have to go through, I'm going to keep fighting the good fight, Greg.
Of course, I absolutely agree.
We keep going because there's good people out there who need us.
Yep.
And we're going to continue to fight for them.
And on that, Cameron, thanks very much for joining us.
Pleasure.
Jerry, as always, until next week. Oh, in fact, I should say we're off next week, Jerry. We'll not be on next week, but we'll be back the following week. We've got stuff to take care of next week. But as I say, we'll definitely be back the following week. And
Absolutely.
I'm sure the full council will definitely be a point. Are we going to go and try and get another guest? Do we want another guest, or do we want a big man back? What do you think?
I think Big Dave's probably got quite a lot to say.
Aye.
About council, about other areas of political import.
Do you know, we're cheaper than a therapist. But anyway, that's been What's the Point. Thanks very much for joining us. Thank you.
Advise that there's a point of order from Councillor Lennon. Councillor Lennon, please.
Chair, thanks very much. It's a point of order in relation to Standard Order 11, and it's Order of Debate and Fair Participation. Point of order is, Convener, understanding Order 11 and on your Order of Debate. I'm asking for a microphone check, if that's possible, between yourself and officers, Chair, that my microphone has been picked up clearly in the chamber and members can hear me. As I'm participating online, it's essential for the integrity of the meeting that no member is excluded for debate due to technical issues. So confirmation on that, and Councillor Brennan, please.
I have to say to you, Councillor Lennon, I am struggling to hear what you have just said. So I'll ask if the clerk or the monitoring officer heard exclusively what you said.
Thank you. As I understand it, Councillor Lennon, you've referred to Standing Order 11, which is failure to attend meetings, but you have asked for a sound check within the chamber. Is that correct?
Yes, point of order. It's Order of Debate and Fair Participation. Rachel, can you not hear it?
I'm sorry, Councillor Lennon, I didn't catch the start of it.
Yeah, so I think then it's probably wise that I propose, if it's possible, Chair, that we have a recess until the technical issues are resolved. I'm online today. I'm using a council device and ensuring that there's no technical issues. So really in effect then what we're being told is potentially these technical issues could hinder any member taking part in debate.
Councillor Lennon, apologies, I didn't catch you at the start previously, but I can hear you loud and clear now, as can we all at the top here, and I'm getting nods of assent in the chamber.
So just for clarification, there's no issue with my microphone?
No issues at all, Councillor Lennon, and no technical issues that we're aware of.